People Not Titles podcast is brought to you by Landtrust Title Services, your partners for results. All right, 10 o'clock. Let's get started sharp. I'm sure we'll have some people joining us. Just want to say good morning to everyone. My name is Steve Kaempf. I'm the Senior Vice President at Landtrust Title Services. I'm so glad to be doing this webinar series. We are always trying to provide some agent education, things to keep you sharp. And hopefully this will be one of those days where you pick up, sometimes it's just the small little thing that you hear or you pick up that can make the difference in your week or in winning a transaction. And right now, I think we need every edge we can get. I want to also introduce our Landtrust team very quickly. We have Matt Lombardi, who's our Senior Marketing Manager. Matt, why don't you say hello?
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for the introduction, Steve,
Yeah.
and you're going to have a great time on this presentation.
Yeah, and you can follow, if you follow the People Not Titles podcast, Matt is our featured star on market trends. Matt has a long career with the National Association of Realtors. He's no longer with them. And however, he does have a lot of insight into a lot of the market trends and things. And so we are happy to feature him monthly. We discuss interest rates. We discuss my membership in the KISS Army, all kinds of topics that are really relevant. Also, I want to introduce our sales, a great sales team. We have Denise Hellstrom, who's here as a panelist. And we have Anya. I tried to promote you to a panelist, Anya, but it won't let me yet. So sorry about that. And we're going to get into the three tools that, we think can really help you transform your business. And so I'm going to start with the introductions to really our featured panel of experts. And first we have Michael Anselmo from Anselmo and Wojcicki. Mike, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about yourself, your firm, and then we'll go on to introduce our next attorney panelist.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Real quick, Mike Anselmo, as Steve stated. I have been the managing attorney for a few bigger law firms in the area, and just this past February, I took the plunge and started my own law firm. So
congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It's been fun and interesting. But yeah, we focus high volume residential transactions, commercial, estate planning, all sorts of corporate work, whether it be entity structuring, wind-ups, the sale and purchase of businesses, and any contractual matters. Plus, we're an accounting firm as well. So we kind of try to take every area that a lot of real estate clients, especially investors, need and put it all in one practice.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. Michael, a couple questions. So there's over your left shoulder, there's a team there. Who's the team?
The Yankees.
Oh, wow.
The 1958 Yankees.
Okay.
Yeah, no rhyme or reason to it. I'm a diehard White Sox fan, although that's very difficult to say.
Yeah.
This year and recently, but
yeah, I was wondering where I met one, and I was wondering where the second one was, and here we go.
There is no second. I should say I'm a recovering White Sox fan for now.
Oh, that's great. Well, Michael, glad to have you. And then I also want to introduce Yelena Shvartsman from Shvartsman Law Offices. And Yelena, we're so glad to have you as well. And if you wouldn't mind taking a minute just to introduce yourself as well.
Thank you so much. I actually had a pleasure working with Mike on so many transactions. I pretty much do real estate. It's been my life for the past 28 years, and 20 as an attorney. This is all I know. This is all I do. This is everything that I love about this area of law. I get to work with happy people most of the time, unless there's issues, but still we make them happy. I have a practice. I'm with probably over. I've been on my own for quite some time. Never worked in a large firm, but I've always have personal relationship with all of my agents and my clients over the years, created many friendships in this industry. And my firm does real estate, everything related to real estate, residential real estate mostly. And we also do business transactions, estate planning, trusts, wills and trusts. So there's
Fantastic. Well, great. And so thank you, Yelena and Mike. And, you know, as an agent, I know that there might be many of you real estate professionals that are on here saying, well, listen, I have my go-to person. You know, every now and then, number one, your go-to person gets busy, and now you have a second opportunity or a second resource for you. And then there are certain clients, maybe they don't do commercial or whatever it is, and you might find that you really resonate with either Mike or Yelena. So I would just ask that you would just really strongly consider, you know, your partnerships, and then consider Mike and Yelena to be part of that. So thank you very much, Mike and Yelena, for that. And we look forward to having you chip in on the topics today. So let's go into the topics today. First off, I want to talk about a closing lock, and we're going to talk about what's happening with fraud and just ways to mitigate fraud. And then you know, closing lock also is a great opportunity to take earnest money. And, you know, you might say, oh, earnest money, that seems like an easy thing to do. Well, more and more, a lot of brokerages are not holding earnest money. It becomes tricky. And I think anytime you can have a method that will make it easier for you to take earnest money and complete the transaction in a safe and secure way, and provide people with confidence that it can be done that way, we feel like that could potentially give you an edge. The second thing I want to talk about is property lookups, where you have an opportunity through just contacting one of our reps to get a quick title lookup on your property to find out who owns it, are there liens, am I dealing with the right owner, is my seller upside down, and am I wasting my time here? Things like that. So we're going to talk about property lookups, and then we're going to also talk about finally the seller net sheet. And some of you, you know, hey, I think that every broker, you know, 15, 20 years ago used to be able to, you know, handwrite their net sheets or calculate the net on the back of a napkin. Well, guess what? Now you don't have to do that anymore. You know, you can have an app that's on your phone. You can have something that's on your desktop that allows you to get very accurate. And also, not just on the title side for the seller net sheet, but now that the buyer's agent's compensation needs to be presented in a way that's effective, we also, part of this tool also allows you to do that on the buyer's estimate, and we'll talk about that. So first off, let's talk about fraud protection and some of the steps that we are taking. You know, if you were part of our last series, which was really about, you know, kind of what we can do to mitigate fraud, there were a few elements that that we talked about that are, you know, right now the fraudsters are really targeting. And one of them is vacant land, VRBOs, or, you know, land that is non-owner occupied. And so I guess I'll pause at that point and say, and ask maybe Yelena, have you seen an uptick in seller fraud or, you know, kind of shenanigans happening in the marketplace?
yes, it's been a concern for a while now, and I always actually, I'm happy that those agents that work with us on a daily basis, and they know, they see all these emails that are being exchanged, that are written on behalf of our law firm, let's say, and we always have a conversation with the sellers. Hey, you know what, be very careful, double check all the information. If you feel that something's not right, or you get these encrypted sometimes messages, please double check with us. We know which title company we work with. We know which you know which lender your buyer works with. We know all the parties involved, and we will double check and make sure that this is a legitimate email or somebody's just fishing for information.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. I know that you guys are on top of it. And Mike, maybe bringing you in, is there something that you're seeing particularly that's new now that you didn't see maybe, 6 months or a year ago? I know wire fraud has been a big issue, but now we have some seller fraud things that are kind of popping up.
Yeah. And I don't want to say necessarily that it's new, but with the land sales particularly, right? Yeah, there has been an uptick, especially in the past 2 years, I want to say, and common sense. So it's come up, I would say about 3 times with me past 2 years. And if you look at the tone of the correspondence and the email with the person who's either trying to purchase or can be selling the property as well, it's more likely that it's a seller. And how cagey they are about certain details and certain information. It's if you and I are sitting here, we're not part of this transaction, we're going to read it and we're going to say, okay, there is an issue here. What I think happens is, one, client gets too excited, and to an extent, for the brokers listening, I have a lot of agents that are getting too excited. They want the deal to close. They have their blinders on saying, well, but it could be. It may not be a fraud. And I get that. We're all excited to close transactions. There have been some slow periods in the past couple of years, but a lot of it truly, truly is common sense, where I'm just sitting there, just jaw agape saying, how are you guys even buying into this? This
Yeah.
is so clearly a problem. But again, you really want to get to the end of that transaction, and it can really kind of cloud your judgment. So I think it's important, like Yelena said, make sure you talk to the attorney. And one thing that your attorney can help with that comes from title companies, right? From Landtrust. We will get, and this doesn't apply to the one-offs, but we will get periodic emails notifying us, hey, if you see a transaction with this individual, this corporation, this LLC, this property on it, flag it. Do not underwrite that loan. I'm sorry, that title policy without further discussion, because they're keeping track of those things. So yeah, not only the attorney, but your title company is a great resource to make sure that it isn't a flagged party, which comes up more often than you think.
That's great. I'm glad you said that, Michael. So let's say, for instance, just giving you a couple of the fingerprint marks that we say our antenna go up for fraud. The first one is it's a call out of the blue, unsolicited. Oh my gosh, I found you. And a lot of times that's very flattering for an agent, right? My gosh, they finally, all of my marketing is paying off, right? Then they say, hey, I want to sell this quickly. So out of the blue, I want to sell quickly. I'd like a cash buyer, and I'm willing to take below market. Those are the 4 things that I believe 6 months, maybe a year from now, will kind of be like, remember when everyone used to get the email from the Nigerian prince saying, I need somewhere to stow all my gold bars, and can I store them in your garage? Or whatever it might be. This is the equivalent of that. But right now, people are biting on it. They're saying, oh my gosh, I got a great seller. They want it closed fast. The market's tight right now. Let's go. Well, here are a couple steps. First off, I think it's great to involve your partner attorney so they can talk you through it. Where an agent might see 10, 15, let's say on the high end, 25 or 30 transactions a year, Michael and Yelena are seeing those maybe weekly, maybe monthly, or whatever it is. So they have a lot more data points where they have a lot more information. They can say, hey, I think we have a fraudulent person here. Here are some steps to take. Also, with Michael and Yelena's partnership with Landtrust, we have a simple mechanism called closing lock, where if we get the email and we get the phone number and we want to verify the seller, that's all you have to do is send us the email and the phone number, and we will verify your seller using the know your customer, the KYC stuff, which basically they're going to ask them questions like, what car did you drive in 1984? You know, that kind of thing, and other questions that it's impossible for the fraudster to know. We have government ID analysis, and we have additional lookups. Even if we do email, we can tell whether they're in town, out of town, what address they're actually, their IP address, what city they're operating from. By the way, another earmark for fraud is, I'm out of town, I can't meet. That's like the main one, I can't meet. And so we want to mitigate that. And one of the ways that we do that is through closing lock. And here's the thing, a lot of times you'll spend, you know, days, hours, weeks, you know, pursuing this client, and then you'll just realize, oh, this person's a fraudster or whatever. You can get ahead of that and save time. So anyway, so that's the first thing, fraud protection. Keep your, and of course, on the wire fraud or anything like that, you know, you want to follow your attorney and your title company's simple advices on any of the wire fraud. You never want to give out wiring instructions as an agent, and we talk about that all the time. The second thing is earnest money. If you want to, and I don't know, Mike, what are you guys seeing on earnest money? Have you seen some things changing there in the market?
Well, yeah, the biggest thing by far is the amount of brokerages willing to hold earnest money.
Yeah.
And the amount of title companies that are willing to do it. And, you know, I shouldn't say that, because title companies have always been willing to do it, but the regularity with which title is going to the title companies. Now, I will hold earnest money at my office. I have no problem with it. The caveat that everyone needs to be aware of, we hope it never gets to this situation, but if there is some conflict later on, all right, property doesn't close and there's a dispute over earnest money, client comes back to me, fight for me on this, I'm conflicted out. I can't do that anymore.
That's a problem with having your attorney. You think, oh, I'm safe, I have an attorney that's holding earnest money. You're not as safe as you think, because now you and your partner attorney are standing in the way of your sellers or buyers' funds.
Yep, absolutely. And yeah, there's truly nothing we can do. Well, Mike, can't you just send out a letter on this and get it going? I can't. I'm the escrowee. It's an interested party. So there are situations where frequently where I'm asked to, and I will. I just give that warning in writing. That'll be a theme from me throughout, is always have everything in writing, just because of how such short memories our clients have when they hear something that they don't want to hear, despite the fact that you told them about it before. But I always just give a warning to all clients saying, hey, I will hold the earnest money. These are the issues if I do.
That's fantastic. By the way, I just wanted to remind everyone, if you have questions, you can just use the Q&A, or you can also participate in the chat. Yelena, do you have anything to add on earnest money? Any kind of insights in that regard?
I absolutely agree with Mike. I actually see quite the opposite. Most brokerages do not want to hold the earnest money. This is why I always step in. I also have no problems, but obviously with the same issues. But most of the brokerages actually try to not to hold the earnest money, not to deal with it. And I completely understand that. The complexity of dealing with the earnest money constantly, and on the accounting portion, and the legal and liability. But every time we're grateful for, you know, if the title company is willing to hold it, it's a big deal for us.
Yeah. Well, and so, and also from an agent standpoint, you know, getting the check, running around, dropping it to the office and that kind of thing is also very cumbersome, right? And so you want to be able to keep your process simple and smooth. And with our earnest money system through Closing Lock, if you were to call your title representative, or you call Yelena and Michael and say, hey, can you hold earnest money? If they're closing with us, we simply just send the buyer a link, and they're able to either able to upload, or they can wire that money in securely via the Closing Lock application. And so that way you're not running around with checks. I know that a lot of you don't run around with checks anymore, but there are, maybe you do still. I mean, I think we see probably 30 or 40% of our earnest money still being dropped off at offices. And, you know, think about in this day and age, we just want to be able to keep it simple. So that's another thing that you can do to keep it simple is contact either Denise or Anya, and and if you have an earnest money situation where you know you're closing at Landtrust, we literally just set that up, send them a link, and they're able to upload their earnest money right via the Closing Lock app.
Hey,
So-
Steve, let me add something real quick, because I know some
Sure.
of the concern I get from clients and really agents is if it goes to the title company, they're going to charge you. And yeah, of course, that is a possibility, and they have their standard fees. But if you have a good relationship with a title company, I've never encountered one where they said, "All right, we're actually going to charge you for this." But waive
Right,
those
you
fees,
charge
and
you
that's
to
why
hold, yeah. Yeah, here's the
Right.
thing. I think what a title company is looking to do, you know, they don't want to hold earnest money for a transaction. We don't either, that we're not going to close, just because it's clumsy for everyone, right? Now we're transferring money around and all this kind of thing. So I think as an agent, I think it's really key. If you're the seller's agent, I think it's really key to have a partnership with an attorney that has a partnership with the title company, and that you guys have a clean process. And all of a sudden, as opposed to, you know, that's a lot of times you'll have a seller's agent say, you know, my cousin Vinny got me out of a DUI over Christmas, and so I want to use him for a real estate transaction or whatever it might be. This is not the day and age to use the family lawyer, the traffic court lawyer, or anybody else to do a real estate transaction. Right now, more than ever, you should be working with a partner that you handpick that can help you handle your real estate transactions from the start to the finish, that understands your cadence, that understands the way you like to do business, your communication style, all those things. And so anyway, you know, and once you do, then you certainly, then there's no fee for us to hold earnest money. If an agent's going to constantly use us to hold earnest money and never close with us, we have the right to charge a $250 fee to release the funds or whatever it might be. So, you know, I would say work with an attorney and work with a title company that in good faith say, hey, listen, we're going to try to get this transaction to close with you, and we're happy to hold the earnest money.
It's a big deal to have the earnest money held by the title company, because at the time of the
Absolutely.
closing, you're not waiting for the money to be transferred from the brokerage or a check dropped off. Because how many times Mike and I'm sure we sat at the closing waiting for the commission wired, or if there's any mistakes that we need to correct at the closing. You have the earnest money, and we could proceed.
That's right. And you know, and to the point of whether the brokerage holds it, the attorney holds it, or the title company holds it, the title company is always kind of viewed as the neutral party, kind of the referee of the transaction. And when the referee is holding the funds, people don't take it personally. They don't get butthurt about not getting their money back because they feel like they're getting into some kind of argument or whatever it is. The title company is a safe place for you to keep your reputation safe while the arguments are happening for your earnest money. And I think that would be my biggest argument for holding it with the title company, is so that if there were to be a dispute or whatever it is, you can kind of say, well, let's see what they say, as opposed to, oh, you know, you referred me to a Yelena, and now she's keeping my money, like Yelena's on some private island, you know, having champagne on the earnest money. You know, that's what people fantasize in their heads, right? But it's not true. It's not happening that way. Okay. Any other comments about earnest money? Any questions about that? Anyone in the chat? No, I think we're good on earnest money. So having a process, you know, again, you know, nowadays when every transaction is tough to get, I think having a process for the simplest pieces of the transaction can make a huge difference in your customer experience. Okay. So basically you're using our Closing Lock app, and then you can also, we have an earnest money form that you fill out and submit the check. There's a way to hold earnest money there too. So have a way and a process for you to hold earnest money. Okay, let's get into property lookups. Now, what a property lookup is and how you achieve the property lookup is you reach out to Landtrust, customer service at Landtrust, or you reach out to Denise or Anya, and their contact information will be sent out after our, or you can reach out to Mike and Yelena as well. And you just say, hey, I'd like to get the disposition of this property. I'd like to get a lookup on the property. And a property lookup, and I'll go through an example of it here, is kind of a know before you go. So if you have a listing presentation, it's a great little thing to have in your folder to say, hey, listen, we've done some research on your property. here's this, whatever it is, and I'll go through what it is. A lot of times if there's a deceased in the mix, and one of the relatives are saying, hey, grandpa died, we want to sell our property. Well, we don't know if they're the proper people that should be signing the contract or should actually be speaking on these properties. So Yelena, maybe you can speak to that. Well, I know that you deal with a lot of situations where the inherited parties are wanting to list the property. Have you seen these scenarios where people who don't have the right to sell it are trying to get in the mix?
Absolutely, many times. And this is why it's very important to work with a reputable title company and know everything in advance, because with your help, we know who to contact. We know if no will or no estate planning documents were ever created, that we could work with a bond, and you'll double check everything that we attorneys need to know, who to contact, who the heirs are. We'll ask the right questions with everything that provided to us. So it's extremely important to understand the heirship and who's able to sign the contract, who can sign a listing. I even get the phone calls from my agents, who can sign the listing. The father passed away, there's 5 kids, but there's a will and there's a executor of the estate and there's a trustee because there's a living trust in place, and we start to dig it out. And absolutely any information, and right up front, right before we dig into a transaction, helps a lot, because we also want a smooth transaction, know exactly which parties must sign and which documents and how the funds should be distributed in the beginning of transaction. So there's no confusion, no miscommunication, and we all work towards a smooth closing.
Absolutely. Michael, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just have some caveats about this, right? So this is an excellent tool, and yes, it certainly gives you as the agent the advantage. But you also have to remember 2 things. It's not a full search, okay? It's giving you a great snapshot. There's a lot to be digested in there, and there are a lot of things that may not pop up when you do this quick track search, essentially. But more along the lines of the heirship, that's complicated, right? You can ask me 15 questions right now on heirship and give me 15 scenarios, maybe be able to answer 5 right off the top of my head. The other 10 I'm looking up. It's a convoluted process, an area of the law which finds its way into real estate as well, right? For obvious reasons. So I don't ever suggest to any agent looking at one of these or taking anyone's word and saying, yes, you have the right to sell because I have this property information, okay? That's something 10 out of 10 times I'm saying you still need to bring it up to your attorney.
Absolutely.
Because it's very difficult. Again, use this as a tool, excellent tool. If nothing else, it just shows your client that you did the work beforehand, right? But they still need professionals to explain that work and go through that work with them.
Yeah, Michael, and that's a great, I think you bring up a great point. And I think that if there's a lot of times it's just a cookie cutter deal, right? And you just know that maybe I want to find out just a little bit of information. Some people never do a property lookup, and some people do it on every transaction. But I think if you see something, or if you understand that something is going to be just a little bit more on the difficult side, it's great, even before the listing, agreement is in place, to bring your attorney into it and say, hey, listen, are there some questions on this listing presentation that I should be asking to make sure I'm running on the right trail? Would you say that's a suitable thing to do? This is particularly with new agents, okay? It's the more experienced agents, I don't think this question ever pops up, but with new agents, they always ask, when can I involve you in the transaction? Tell them the same thing. They're 90% of the time, a contract just pops up in my inbox and I just start working on it, right? But there is no hard and fast rule. That's just how it works, because that's how agents work, right? Yes.
You should not be nervous, shy, tentative about contacting the attorney at any point in the transaction, especially at this point. I think, one, it helps to make sure that you're giving the accurate information to your client. And you don't have to walk it back later, but it also shows that you have a resource right on hand.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with bringing the attorney in, and just because the industry standard is to just get it under contract and send it to the attorney. If you work in commercial transactions, I would be shocked. I would
Right.
just I would be mortified if you sent me a fully signed commercial contract and said, started working on this. That's just very hyper specific to residential real estate, and not even residential real estate in the Chicagoland area. Okay. You go anywhere else, and it's much more common to bring the attorney in ahead of time. So my thought is don't be shy about that, and I encourage it.
Awesome. Yelena, any comments on that? If I'm sitting at a listing presentation, right, and I have a question and I have a great relationship with you, I could even text you, right? Hey, do you have a minute? And all of a sudden, boom, I got Yelena on the phone, and you're making it a warm introduction by answering maybe a question or a nuance of the transaction.
Absolutely, and I'm always glad to do it. And I know a lot of agents that use Title Pro, the detailed report, and you know what? At least it forces them to ask the right questions as well. And I get calls right from these listing presentations, or at the time they sign the contract. Hey, there's John Smith is on title, but there's a mortgage. I see, and John says he doesn't have a mortgage, but this mortgage is from 10 years ago, and so we ask the right questions, and we know, I mean, this is still very helpful. And I always say that it is best to get an attorney right away, get attorney involved. We can together work towards a smooth closing. We could prepare the seller properly. We could ask for them to look for required information, what we need in advance before we even get started on everything, so they get going on what's going on with the title of the property and what we need to do. Because a lot of times releases are not recorded. So a lot of my clients receive mortgage payoff releases in the mail, but they never take the next step and record them. So these mortgages still pop up when they sell these properties, and they panic. And we could sort of hold their hand and help them go through this process, go through this stress fairly quickly. And this report is helpful just as a general information about the property. Yes, absolutely, use it, look at it. But again, everything needs to be double checked, triple checked, and we don't take the seller's words for anything. Also, I always say double check, even whatever the seller says, we should double check, especially, we've dealt with so many issues where, oh, my assessment is $100 when in fact it's $300, or even as little as that. So obviously this is an amazing tool, and but this is just to keep track and keep us in track on what we need to do to prepare for a smooth closing.
Yeah, and I totally agree. This is like...
Hey, thanks for listening to the People Not Titles podcast. We are brought to you by our great sponsors, Landtrust Title Services, your partners for results.
This is like, this is a very wide, general tool that helps start the conversation, helps you make an introduction to the professionals that you're going to be using in the transaction, might create a question, and I think for questions of ownership where it's like, I'm talking to this guy, but this person's on the title, that's already a bugaboo. The second thing is, if I see that, for instance, this loan amount here is 336, and I know that they want to try to sell this property for 350 or 360 or whatever the valuation is, now I know we're going to be tight, and that's another conversation I would like to have as well. Or if I see a big, maybe there's something else on that will have to be paid off or whatever it is. It might be something where I want to have that conversation up front. And so anyway, that's our property lookup. The greatest tool that I would say, you say the three tools. Yes, it's kind of like, ooh, the three tools. I think the greatest tool is having a person like Yelena or Mike on your side that can really bring you through the transaction the right way. because as an agent, you're a quarterback of the transaction, but you are really only as good as the people that are in a part of your partnership. And so anyway, okay. So so we do have a question in the box which says, what happens if a third party gives Earnest money? Can they get it back if the deal is falling through?
You want me to take that?
Yeah.
Third
Yeah.
party.
Okay. So, Asma, I assume you mean mom or dad or boyfriend or girlfriend, husband, wife, fiance, whatever it is sending that in by a third party, right? And the answer is, yeah, they can get it back. It's the same as any other transaction. It doesn't matter if it's the same principal sending in the earnest money. The thing is, you still have to have the mutual cancellation, and not the mutual cancellation agreement that you're thinking of, that is a form that I know a lot of brokerages use, which is nice to have on record, but an actual cancellation between the parties. Okay, so yeah, you agree that the contract is terminated, that it was terminated properly, and the seller just releases the earnest money like any other transaction. There's nothing really different there.
Yeah, so the rules are the same no matter who submits the earnest money.
I have a feeling Asma has a very specific situation going on right now, and she wants to ask about that. But
Well,
when
yeah,
you can contact me. I see, I know it.
Okay, there you go. Yes, I do.
You can ask. Feel free to email me or
Yeah.
Yelena about that
Yeah.
after the presentation.
Yeah. And okay, so there we have the property lookup. And you can get more information from your title reps about that, or from Michael and Yelena. Now, finally, I want to talk about the seller net sheet, because nothing is worse than getting the number wrong, and all of a sudden you've done all this work, and then the seller gets $10,000 less than they thought they would. And they're asking you why, and they think you thought you did a great job, and you find out that they think you didn't do that great of a job. Have you ever had an experience like that, Yelena or Mike?
Yes. Yes, but yes, absolutely. I love this tool myself. If I need something, I have a similar my kind of tool
Sure.
where I use for the seller net sheets. This one's it's great on the go for agents. I highly recommend it. Gives you an overview.
Yeah.
Of pretty much what to expect.
Yeah. And in this I'm not going to try to say this is the greatest tool in the world. What I would say is you need to have a tool, and you need to have a way to communicate it, because when someone says, oh, you said, and you said, right, they hear so many things from so many people. You can go back and go, actually, I sent you this on June 25th. This is what we said. Can you just take a look at this email? And all of a sudden they look and go, oh, that's right. So it's no more he said, she said. It is really, I communicated in a professional way what I think the net proceeds will be. So I'm just going to go through. Michael, anything you want to add to that just real quick before I get into just a quick little tutorial on it?
Yeah, two things about this, because it ties back into a couple of things I was discussing earlier. One, this is something written that it's going to be on the record for you and your client that everybody can reference back to, right? So I also have something I send up to clients. It is very heavily in bolded, highlighted terms stating this is not your final number, right? And there are certain things that can change. Taxes, the payoff amount. A lot of clients don't understand that because they have that net sheet, that's what the final number is going to be. Anybody who's closed in the past couple days, seeing that the Cook County second installment tax has just come out, it's completely thrown off just the settlement statements recently.
Totally.
Okay. So when you send these out, do not, and I'm not suggesting anyone's doing this, do not state this is the amount that you're going to make. This is a great estimate based on the information we have now, that's going to help us guide, how much money we should be asking for and all those types of things. The other item I was going to bring up, I forgot because I talked too much.
Well, it'll come up, Michael. It'll hit you here, and then you just you just chip right in.
Yes,
Well,
thank
so
you.
what I'm going to do is I'm not going to go through the whole thing and all that because, you know, we can, for our agents, we can invite you to the app and you can go through it. But I just want to tell you a couple of features that I really like about this. And so first off, there are several things. You could do a title quote, loan estimate, and closing disclosure. These are things I wouldn't recommend. And by the way, Michael, to your point, every time you send this seller net sheet to someone, it says clearly, this is an estimate. There's all the disclaimers on there. This is not your final number, you know, blah, 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 blah. So there's a lot of disclaimers when this goes out that people can refer back to, okay? But I just want to go through the seller net sheet real quick. And does anyone, if anyone has a listing, if you wouldn't mind typing it, I think for some reason the chat is not working. So if you wouldn't mind typing it into the Q&A, if you have a listing address right now, you can promote your listing right here. Is someone typing one in? Okay, I'm going to use the one from our property lookup, 232 James. Okay, so when you notice I type in the address, it automatically pulls up the property that we have here. Okay, so there are certain things that are related to the property, whether it be stamps, whether it be certain transfer taxes or whatever it is. All of these get automatically uploaded into the property. And let's say that this property is going to sell for $575,000. And let's say the closing date is going to be July 26, exactly 30 days from now. Now, the title fees, the only fee that this uploads all of our title fees in here. The only fee that you have to add is your attorney fee. Okay. And the seller pays it. And let's just say this is going to be a $750 attorney fee. Okay. That we added to it. Now we have a loan payoff. And let's say the loan payoff on that lookup was $323,000. And now let's say on the commission side, it's not August yet, so we can still put buyer's broker commission in. And let's say your company even has a tax fee, a transaction fee of $450. And we could even say that there's a homeowners association of $120 a month, and the seller paid it. Okay. And the property taxes on this property annually, I believe, was $8,400. And so we would have last year's paid and this year's not paid and due. That's right. Is that right, Michael? Is that what you're talking about? Is not paid and due is what was showing up for June?
Well, no, we just want to make sure that because the taxes are prorated, and be very careful. I've actually had the same experience with Mike where people refer back, but you said my credit should be, if my taxes are 8,400,
Right.
and why am I giving them 92? I said, well,
okay, that's a great point. So
yes,
in that case, we talk about prorations, right? If you're going to prorate, and what are you recommending? Let's talk about prorations real quick and how you're handling them, because there are new assessments happening, right, Yelena? So how would you recommend handling the proration? And I know it's on the buy side, you handle it one way, and on the list side, you handle it one way. So let's talk about the list side real quick with prorations.
yes, different hats we have to wear, but I always ask my agents in the contract to put TBD. This was one of the blank spaces where I say, hey, don't guess. Let us attorneys figure this out. And it used to be the norm, 110 in Cook County, 105 everywhere else. But Mike will confirm that this is no longer the case. I mean, the assessed values went up significantly. And if, let's say I work in Lake Cook, DuPage, McKinley, and Kane, and 105 was okay, but Lake County assessed values went up significantly higher than 5%. Cook County assessed values as well. So if you use a real estate attorney like Mike and I, we do research. We actually sit down and we look at history. We look at what the assessed value was last year or last time it was reassessed. tax rates, equalizer. We look at everything. We look at the current value in when the next reassessment is, and this is how we decide. We're on the seller side, obviously. We try to be as fair and reasonable as possible. Tax Prorations is not where we, anyone should make money. It's you just want to cover the tax liability that's due, and we obviously, I mean, there's no golden 105 or 110 anymore. We have to double check, and we have to make sure when the next reassessment is. The values right now in 2024 are significantly higher than they were, let's say, in 2023. And if 2024 is the reassessment year as well, which is in Cook County quite, we have to make sure we either try to get a higher tax proration, or we hold the escrows. We hold the escrows until this, we have either indication of what the actual tax bill will be, especially if the value is significantly higher than shown on the assessor's website.
Great. Thank you for really talking to that. Michael, is there anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to say there's something in there that Yelena said that I really love. And, she was talking about wearing different hats, and you were talking about if we handle it differently if we're on the sale and the buy side. And I will tell you, and I harp on this, you can see any presentation I've given, you'll probably hear me bring it up. I do not. I treat it the same. It all depends on how you practice, but the purpose of a tax proration is not for either party to try to renegotiate the contract for higher credits, giving lower credits. And it's certainly, if anybody's role in that transaction, it's not the attorney's job, nor should they ever be trying to renegotiate that just because they want to get a lower proration for the taxes. The only reason we're giving prorations for unpaid taxes is because taxes are paid in arrears, okay? And it's
to cover the obligation.
Exactly. And it's difficult to know what that exact amount is. When we have something like a new assessed value coming out, and we know that bill is going up by 150%, well, there's going to be a lot of panic and a lot of feedback. If you can explain clearly why you're asking for it, I don't see why there is so much pushback on it. Saying, we know the tax bill is going to go up this much. Pretend I'm on the buyer side. I'm not asking for any sort of windfall to my buyer. I'm asking if the buyer is not covering the seller's responsibility, right? And
right.
So if I'm on the sales side, this kind of goes against what you said, because it's counterintuitive to how you see a lot of attorneys act. And someone shows me that assessed value came up, I have to talk to my client first, obviously, but I'm not objecting to it.
Right.
I'm not objecting it just so that I can grandstand and get back on the phone with my client and say, hey, I saved you $300, right? Maybe I section area saying, hey, this is outside the scope of the contract, but this is, you can get me going for a full hour on this. This is such a pet peeve of mine where attorneys, I just don't think it's part of our role or our duty. We're supposed to protect our clients legally. We're not supposed to renegotiate things, which is essentially asking for another credit. And like Yelena said, if you have an attorney who's knowledgeable about these things, who doesn't just push contracts through, who does the work on it before letters go out, there is a rhyme and a reason to why we're asking what we're asking for.
Yes.
And from the agent side, what I'm trying to say is, we will have, my agent will text me back, call me back and say, hey, the listing agent is all pissed off saying, your attorney asked for 134%. I've never seen that before. I just don't love the number 34. It came from somewhere.
Right.
So, we do pay in arrears. There's history to that because of the Great Depression, but it's with respect to those tax prorations. I like what Yelena said, putting TBD for the attorney to do in there, and let me then explain why we're asking for a very specific amount. But yeah, I'm getting a little off track. But
No, I like that, Michael. What I hear you saying from an agent's perspective is that as a seller, the spirit of it is I need to pay my taxes. And as the buyer, this is not a place for me to make money on. There's no one should win here. We should be able to, as accurately and as concisely as to the right number, and who is supposed to pay that. This is not a place for you to squeeze somebody in a negotiation or horse trading for that.
Yeah, it's inappropriate. It's
why-
outside the scope of the contract, and it's just not the attorney's role. And I like I said, I think some do it, not everyone, and anybody in any profession. It's more of a grandstand, and look how great I am. I saved you $100. Yeah, but you also screwed over the other side, and you dragged out the negotiations for another 2 weeks that we didn't need.
Yeah, no one looks good in that. Yelena, you were going to add something to that?
No, I absolutely agree with Mike. And there's a reason why we ask for certain things. I mean, obviously, there are lawyers that will try to squeeze out a little more money, or save a little. But if there's a reasonable explanation, if there's definitely expectations of that tax bill to be lower or higher, this is where we adjust. And if we absolutely cannot reach an agreement, so we hold the money in escrow, we hold the amount in question in escrow until we can
See where
figure
it
out
shakes
for
out.
sure.
Yeah, see where it shakes out.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's the worst case scenario, but
so in this, so if I'm making a listing presentation and I might want to be working up a seller net sheet here, what do you recommend? Do you recommend that when I'm calculating this and I know what their taxes are, do you recommend I put a little bit more in as a buffer?
yes, that's never a bad idea. Plus, we're guessing when the closing will take place. I mean,
Totally.
now this
Yeah.
is the seller net sheet, so probably take a little more. I mean, I think it's just a comforting point. As soon,
Yeah, I agree with you.
It depends on your seller. If they know that this is merely an overview of what to expect
Right.
on these numbers, just like we put in the HOA fees. But what if there's more fees associated with HOA? What if there's money, move in, move out, closing documents, paid assessment letters, 22.1 disclosure? There's so much more. As long as they're constantly understood, that they're constantly repeated, hey, this is an estimate. And this is just to give you an overview what to expect. Concentrate on closing documents. On closing fees. Concentrate on payoffs. Even the payoff amount. What if it was paid down? What if there's interest? What if there's escrow shortage? I mean, even on the payoff, we're guessing.
Absolutely. And okay, so those are great reminders, Yelena and Mike, that this is an estimate. We're going to put in 9,400 as opposed to 8,400, and then let's assume there are no other expenses or credits. And now I hit calculate. When I hit calculate, it's going to come up with this kind of net number, and it's going to have all of the settlement charges. It'll have my transfer taxes all accurately in there. It'll have our broker commissions in there. It'll have our county taxes, credit from seller, other expenses, and then our net proceeds. Then you can go into.
Let me ask you something real quick. So, and
Yes.
this kind of goes to why everyone has to be careful with these, right? So I know Naperville, and there's no city transfer tax. If I don't see it, and that's going to be a huge number that's left off there. And that's why it's, I think this is a great example why it's really important to say estimated. Okay.
Yes.
Other fees that may not be in there. This is one. The Naperville is going to be much higher than the Illinois and the county.
Yeah, there you go. That's a great, it should have put in there, but, okay, that's a great point. Yeah. So it's an estimate, right? And then once you're done with this, you can download the PDF, for this, and, that's what your seller net sheet looks like when you send it. So now you have something really nice, really presentable that you can send forward. And you can even, at this point in time, you might, if you know this listing is on deck or anything, now it's time to bring in Mike and Yelena and say, hey, listen, anything you see here that I have to be concerned with or whatever it is, that's a great time to have a conversation with your attorney and say, you know what, this area, the assessed values are this and that, or whatever it is. You can have those kind of conversations. So, okay, so that is, you can either email this document or you can PDF it. I would say I like this for two other things that I would say right away. There is a sell to net, where if your net proceeds are that your goal is, I want to make $250,000 off the sale of my home. Then you are able to go from the sell to net number, and it'll calculate based on all the various elements of the transaction what you're going to need to list the property for. That is one that a lot of agents are using. The other one is a seller's multiple offers, where you can have offer one, offer, and then the type of financing, then you can add an offer and have offer two, offer three, offer four. In this market, I think this is powerful. Even if you never send it to your client, this is a way for you to organize all the offers that you're considering, so you can then properly present it by getting it all just square in your head. Okay, so I love this multiple offer scenario. And then finally, the buyer's estimate is fantastic, where you are able to also add in your real estate broker commissions along with the other elements of the transaction. And again, you know, we're running up against the hour, so I don't want to, if you contact Denise or Anya, they will be able to invite you to the Seller NetSheet platform, and we're happy to do a tutorial for you. And this is not just you're able to do it on your desktop, but you're able to do it from your phone as well. Yeah, and so you can get down to payments, you can get down to amount of cash to close, and those kind of things on the buy side. All right, we said a lot.
I just want to say, one of the nice things about our Seller Net Sheet is you can personalize it. So you saw the example, it had Steve's
Yes,
information.
thank you.
You can put your information, your headshot, so you make it personal to you.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. Matt, anything you want to add to any of these elements?
No, but thank you for asking. What I want to say is the realtors that are attending, and then we'll watch this after we post this, is to really take advantage of not only the best sales team in the business, but also the attorney network we go through. Landtrust is one of the top, recognized over the last 12 to 15 years as a top title company here in the state of Illinois. And our operation team is literally the best in the business. So if you haven't worked with us, check us out today.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. Well, I want to thank all of our agents for taking the time out, and hopefully there's something that you gathered from this. I think at the very least you met, if you haven't met Yelena or Michael before, you met two top-tier attorneys that can be an amazing resource. They are trustworthy, they are professional, they have been in the business. You know, a lot of times you want to get a litigator into a real estate transaction, and I love the spirit of Mike and Yelena. Even though they're, you know, kind of competing for business, you can tell there's a spirit of camaraderie. There's a spirit of, let's get the transaction done. Let's do what's right for the buyer and the seller. And I just want to applaud Yelena and Mike both for that. And so let's start with maybe Yelena. Yelena, any final thoughts that you have just about the market, about just, you know, whatever?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for the opportunity today. And I think from this hour, we can all take out that every transaction, it takes a team, and the team that you create in the very beginning, and you surround yourself with people that you trust, including the title company, the attorney, the mortgage broker, the inspector, and there's so many people involved. I always say that the actual closing is a wedding. Everything else is a preparation for the wedding. And you want to make sure, yes, and you want to make sure that everything goes smoothly and the closing is a happy day. And the only way everything goes smoothly, and the only way to have the closing to be happy for your clients, buy or sell, is to have a good team behind you, somebody you can rely on. Somebody that will be your backup and will step up if you need them to. You obviously be a control freak, be in control of the situation at all times I know how much hard work is put in by all of us, and especially you, and securing these contracts nowadays is craziness. But for us to keep it is just as difficult. But when we
Absolutely.
all do it together, it makes everyone's life easier. So hopefully you guys are busy and have a team behind you that you can rely on and have you as your backup. And feel free to reach out. Again, attorneys are here for you. Title company is here for Landtrust is amazing, and with every tool that's available, we're always here to back you up, to double check on the information, to talk to your client at any time of the day. For me, a text, call, weekends. I know that it's been difficult in this industry. So good luck, and we're here for you.
Thank you. Michael, how about you? Anything final to say?
Yeah, no, I just want to echo your statement, Steve, that, yeah, if you want a really good A+ attorney, call Yelena. If you're looking for a B- that's kind of fun on the phone,
You're very
give me a
kind.
call. Give me a call.
Yeah.
But yeah, relationships are huge. It's why I work with Landtrust. They make my transactions smoother. That's all I need. And a title company, that's what I'm looking for with agents I work with. I'm assuming you all do want the same thing with your partners as well. So you're on this presentation, so you're on the right track. So keep it
Yeah.
going.
Mike, you make a great point. We talk about these tools, and these are just, these are just tools. The real gift of, and the real value in the tool is the relationships you have and the relationships you make in the marketplace, and and your personal brand. So, Mike, Yelena, thank you so much for being a part of our presentation today. Thank you, Denise and Anya and Matt and all of you agents out there. We're here for you and anything we can do. Have a great day. Blessings to everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Signing off.
Hey, thanks for listening to the People Not Titles podcast. We are proudly sponsored by Landtrust Title Services. If you enjoyed the podcast, please hit the like button, please subscribe, and we'd love it if you'd share our podcast with your friends. Thanks a lot.